So it seems that Anthony Joshua is eyeing up his exit strategy from boxing. I'm reading from a Boxing News 24/7 article, and it has a quote from Joshua where he was on the Jonathan Ross show. In case you don't know, the Jonathan Ross show is a talk show in the UK. A bunch of celebs go on and usually talk rubbish. But yeah, Joshua's talking about the remainder of his career potentially. And to quote him, he says, "I've always said 35. I'm 35 in October." Just to interject, I think he means October next year. "I'm thinking another 2 years or so if my body holds out." End quote. So yeah, very short and succinct, but I think it opens up the topic for discussion of Anthony Joshua and how much longer he's got left. Um, it's crazy to think that, we think of it maybe coming to an end early, in the next 2 years or so, but Anthony Joshua has already been pro for like 10 and a half years. So he's been about for a while. And yeah, it's always interesting because when fighters talk about retirement, a lot of people kind of jump to the conclusion that he's washed up, he doesn't want it anymore, he's finished. He should retire now, not in 2 years. And I kind of get that sentiment because, when you're in a sport such as boxing where you have to dedicate so much of it, you have to be so focused because it's an intense sport, it's a dangerous sport. You can't, we've seen instances where people have kind of had one foot out the door in terms of retirement, and then they slip up and it costs them quite big. It's always interesting to uh, hear fighters talk about their potential retirement. It's almost like it's a bit taboo in boxing as well. You can't talk about this fighter's retirement while he's still active. That's disrespectful, blah, 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 blah. But when the fighter talks about it themselves, I think it's fair game. Um, and yeah, thinking about Joshua, I can't really see him going on for that much longer myself. Um, Purely because I don't see Joshua as being one of these guys who's going to fall into the trap of boxing and almost be like addicted to it. You get some fighters who they just can't give up. They just can't shake off the boxing bug. I don't think that's going to be Joshua, to be fair, for a number of reasons. Firstly, he has made an astronomical amount of money. I think that's the elephant in the room is this guy, he could have retired years ago. Put into perspective, back in 2015 when he fought Dylan White for the British title, I think he got about £3 million, which is absurd. That's unheard of. £3 million for a British title, and like power to him because it just goes to show how much of a draw he was. 2015 to 2018, I think Joshua was at the peak of his powers from a revenue perspective because he was just making absolutely enormous sums of money. And even after that as well, I think even the Ruiz rematch, he got about 60 million or something like that, I think. Um, so yeah, crazy sums of money. He could have retired years ago and he still would have made enough money to set his family up for generations. But also, I think Anthony Joshua, he's admitted that he's an overthinker. He's perhaps overly analytical. And I think because he has that kind of mindset, he doesn't want to allow himself to be retired by boxing. He wants to retire from boxing on his own terms. Because we've seen fighters of the past where they just keep going and going and going. And it seems to be the allure of the blood, sweat, and tears and glory mindset, but also because they haven't made enough money or they've made poor business decisions. And so they have to fight on because they either feel compelled to or they need to like put food on the table. Um, but particularly with the mindset, I don't think Joshua will allow that to happen to himself because I think he's aware of the kind of danger that he's in when he's in boxing. And I'm not trying to make out that Joshua's an overly cautious or careful person or he's scared or anything like that, but I think he's aware of the consequences or the potential consequences if he stays in boxing for too long and gets retired by the sport. And I don't think he wants to allow that to happen. I could be completely wrong, but just what we know of Anthony Joshua as a person, as his mindset, I think he wants to come out of the sport with his faculties intact. Um, and obviously, like, I'd encourage that. I think most people would. Like, ultimately, yeah, if you leave behind an amazing legacy, it is just that, it's a legacy. You know, you want to be able to enjoy the remainder of your life with some kind of quality of life. You know, oh yeah, having lots of money is one thing, but being able to walk and talk and actually live properly and not just be a vegetable, I think that's just as valuable. And so, yeah, I think I tend to suspect that Anthony Joshua will be a man of his word. I can't see him even going up to 37. I can't see it. I think in the next year, assuming that things or events unfold as they've been penciled into, because we know Joshua has been mentioned alongside Filip Hrgovic and Daniel Dubois, potentially fighting one of them in in September, assuming that they fight in June. Um, because there's a lot of ifs with this situation. It's like, okay, if Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk fight in May, there'll probably be a rematch. If so, then the IBF will be made mandatory. If so, it'll be Hrgovic versus Dubois. If so, it could be Joshua versus the winner. It's like there's so many ifs. It's so much potential. But that's the conversation, nevertheless. But yeah, I just thought I'd give my take on this. Anthony Joshua retiring potentially in the next couple of years. I think that's realistic. And I've also, I thought about this before. I think Anthony Joshua is one of those fighters who he'll only be truly appreciated once he's retired and people look back on his resume and they'll be like, damn, this guy, he fought a lot of good guys and he got some good results. Because Anthony Joshua, yeah, he's got his fanboys, but he's got a hell of a lot of detractors as well. And I think a lot of it just comes down to the fact that he's good and he's mainstream, and a lot of people in boxing sometimes they don't like that. You know, they want to be a little bit edgy, and they want to like the either the underdog or the guy who doesn't get the mainstream fanfare. I think it's undeniable Anthony Joshua has been an amazing addition to the heavyweight division for the past few years, and many people would say that he played a big role, maybe even the biggest role, in reviving the excitement in British boxing. And I tend to agree with that, to be fair. You know, you go back to 2015, let's say, where Anthony Joshua was fighting Dylan White and Tyson Fury was fighting Klitschko. There was no fanfare around Tyson Fury fighting Klitschko. And Tyson Fury ended Klitschko's reign, which was it was a dull old time, believe me. Nobody really cared about Fury. I liked Fury as a fighter. Back in those days, Fury was actually funny. Like, he was entertaining. He wasn't a bore to listen to. Whereas now, I can't listen to Tyson Fury interviews to save my life. And not that it's about interviews, but it just goes to show how times have changed. Whereas, like, Tyson Fury, he was unifying the division, becoming unified heavyweight champion, beating Klitschko. Yeah, okay. It was a great win, but it didn't really set the world alight. Whereas Anthony Joshua fighting Dylan White was a big deal. And then he went on to fight Charles Martin, became a champion, and then the sky was the limit there. So Anthony Joshua did a lot for British boxing. And I think people are only really, like, the majority of people will only truly appreciate that when he's retired. But yeah, I guess we've got to wait and see, because he's not out just yet. But it's interesting nevertheless, to consider the trajectories that fighters are on. But yeah, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think Anthony Joshua will retire by 37, or do you think he'll retire before? Do you think he'll retire afterwards and be like, wasn't it Amir Khan who always said that he'd get to a certain age and retire, and he'd get that age and he'd still be fighting? Those were the days. But yeah, nevertheless, leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and thanks for listening.